criticism for the so-called Eurosceptics. How on earth could those people, many of whom I shared platforms with during the referendum, and some of whom took very prominent positions within the Vote Leave campaign, how on earth could they live with the terms of us staying part of a customs union, of being absolutely no guarantee of getting real control back of our borders, of giving away £30 million for all of it? I mean, the whole thing. How could they survive any of it? Well, I was very pleased when David Davis resigned last night. Yes, he did it as a matter of principle. I think he was right to do so. And then Boris, 15 hours later, also resigns and sends an absolutely scathing letter that says, under the terms of a Chequers agreement, our country would be reduced to the status of a colony. You can't get much tougher than that. David Davis and others have said all the way through that their motivation was actually not to remove Theresa May as Prime Minister. I don't think Boris is exactly saying that. And maybe this is his one and only big chance of taking over the top job. Well, let's get some analysis of what's been going on with the 1922 Committee, the European Research Group, Jacob Rees-Mogg and all. Let's go to Theo Usherwood, LBC's political editor. Theo, good evening.
It has been a very, very tough day for Theresa May. In the last few moments, I've got hold of Boris Johnson's resignation letter, which he sent this afternoon, saying that the dream of Brexit is dying, being suffocated needlessly by self-doubt. And of course, Boris Johnson's argument is that if Theresa May actually believed in Brexit, then she would be able to deliver it. But he said that because he can't go along with the government's position, because he actually believes that the government has a song to sing, and those are his words, when it comes to Brexit, and it's not singing it, he has fallen on his sword tonight. And alongside David Davis, the Brexit secretary, who went just before midnight yesterday, Theresa May has been meeting with the 1922 Committee this evening. She's told that meeting in the Palace of Westminster that to decide is to lead. Some quizzical looks around the room because it's taken her 2 years to reach this position, Nigel. But she has decided, hasn't she? And she's come down on the side of the Remainers and Oliver Robbins, and that's why Boris Johnson and David Davis have decided to go along, of course, with Steve Baker. That final resignation shouldn't be underestimated. He's very well respected within the Eurosceptic movement on the Conservative backbenches, and although there is now, of course, a split with many leavers coming out in favour of what the Prime Minister has put forward when it comes to the customs union, there's a feeling that the government is hanging by a thread.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And are 48 letters going to go in demanding a leadership contest? That's the real question.
It is the real question. It is very, very close. There had been whispers that Graham Brady had the 48 letters, and he is, of course, the chairman of the 1922 Committee. And there's no equivocation about this, Nigel. As soon as Graham Brady, the chairman, has the 48 letters from individual MPs, he has to go to the Prime Minister and say that there has to be a vote of no confidence. It doesn't trigger a leadership election. It triggers a vote of no confidence in the Prime Minister. And that's quite a crucial distinction, because Theresa May and Downing Street said this afternoon, will contest that leadership, will contest that vote of no confidence in the House of Commons. Now, she said previously, and Downing Street has said previously, that they would expect the rebels, those who challenged Theresa May, to secure a majority of Conservative MPs. There are 316. That would require 159 Conservative MPs to say that they had no confidence in Theresa May. But realistically, Nigel, if the rebels, if those who think Theresa May has had her time, reach triple figures, then it would be very, very difficult for her to stay. She needs to be able to command the rump of the Conservative Parliamentary Party. But at the moment, that rumour that the 48 letters had been reached, that threshold had been reached, has actually been shot down, which gives an indication that it's very, very close, but perhaps not there quite yet. There is, as I said, and another rule change, one final rule change that's important is that under Michael Spicer, the former chairman of the 1922 committee, letters could last a year. Now there is no, they roll on and on and on indefinitely, and as soon as Graham Brady has it, then he triggers that no confidence vote.
Theo, thank you very much indeed. Well, I'll tell you what I think, folks. I think if Theresa May stays as Prime Minister, we will not get a clean democratic Brexit. The wishes of the voters, both in a referendum and in a general election, will be betrayed. I think it's vital for Brexit that this truly awful Prime Minister is removed. So I'm hoping there will be at least 48 letters and that we will move on to that vote of confidence in her leadership. For my own part, I'm obviously absolutely furious. Furious not just with the establishment, not just with the Blairs, not just with the Cleggs, the Adonises and everybody else. I've been very, very angry with the Brexiteers, but I do personally think David Davis, Boris Johnson, Steve Baker have done the right thing today. I spent over 25 years of my life working for Brexit, fighting to get this referendum, trying to make UKIP a credible political movement. And we achieved that. We got there. This referendum would not have happened without the one party in British politics that genuinely believes in Brexit. I thought and I hoped that my work was done. I've already said that if Article 50 gets suspended beyond March the 29th, then I'll put myself back into full-time campaigning. I'll add to that tonight. Gerard Batten, who is the leader of UKIP, who has my confidence and support, his term as leader comes to an end in March of next year, the end of March next year. There will be a leadership contest within UKIP in March next year. If Brexit is not back on track, if we're not actually going to be leaving, and if this Chequers agreement has not been broken, then I will very seriously consider putting my name forward to run as leader of UKIP again. And I can assure any Conservatives listening to this, sitting in marginal seats, who are not prepared to stand up and honour the wishes of the electorate, I will make damn sure in that situation that you all lose your seats, because there are millions of Conservative voters very unhappy indeed. That's my position. My question to you, the public, is were David Davis and Boris Johnson right to resign? And I'm going to go to my first caller of the evening, who is Adam in Lambeth, and first-time caller to this show.
Hi, Nigel. I'm not first-time caller. It was the first time I've spoken to you. That's all.
Fine. Okay. Well, very good to speak to you. What do you think, Adam? Did they do the right thing?
Yeah, absolutely. They did the right thing. And I think Boris is a strategic. He has too much strategy, so he knows something that we don't regard in the Conservative Party. If he's resigned, it's for a reason. And I think this is going to end up being a leadership contest. I expect Theresa May to dig her heels in, because that's what she's pretty much been told to do by, the powers that be that want us to remain in the EU, which, it's not democratic at all. And they're going to take your threat very seriously that you've just put on air, because it definitely hit them home last time you went gun-ho for seats in the European Parliament and all the rest, which you've done really well. Gave us the referendum and won it. So, I'm not a UKIP fan whatsoever, Nigel, and just have to respect the fact that you got the Brexit in the end that we kind of deserved. Now, for me, I think she's going to dig her heels in, and she's probably going to try and go for a general election, because it's going to be her only way of saying that she has a mandate for this and her way forward.
Adam, but I agree with you. When you said that for Boris Johnson to have done this, there must have been a reason. I think he was testing the temperature over the course of the last 48 hours. And certainly what I saw on this show yesterday morning, people ringing up saying, I voted Tories 60 years. I'll never vote for them again under this leader. And I think he sensed that. I also think it's pretty unlikely that Boris would have resigned if he didn't think 48 letters would give 22 million. Okay, listen, we must move on. This is the Nigel Farage Show. It's 7:15. Sure. I've laid out my position. I've laid out my position here. I couldn't be clearer. We need to have the Brexit people voted for. It's a matter of democracy. It's a matter of trust. I mean, frankly, if it's not delivered, why would anybody bother to vote in any elections ever again? So I feel that David Davis and Boris Johnson actually were right to do what they did. I really, really do. I wonder what Joe in Skegness thinks, a new caller to this show.
Hello, Nigel. I hope you can hear me. I'm actually just up the coast from Skegness in a place called Mablethorpe. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Right, now, the reason why I'm ringing... I phoned UKIP today for some reason to get a flag for something. And what I put to them was, I hope Nigel Farage, because 2 years ago you said that you would be watching the negotiation process like a hawk. That's what you said. And you've actually answered it. You've actually answered it in the last 10 or 15 minutes that you will put yourself up. And I admire you for that. I really do admire you for that. And I really do hope that you and UKIP can get along, because to me, this is absolutely incredible what's happening. I will not vote again if
Do you think, Joe, do you believe what's happening is a betrayal of the Brexit vote?
Absolutely. I mean, I've gone to the point where I don't even trust the likes of Boris Johnson. I may be wrong here in myself. I'm doubting Boris Johnson. I'm doubting David Davis. And respects to you, Nigel, I've even had doubts about you, because, 2 years ago, a friend of mine said, we've had these situations before with referendums, and the people haven't been listened to, and the voting system has been not gone the way it should do.
Well, that's certainly true, Joe. But I mean, do you now think Boris? And you said you doubted him. Do you now think Boris, in the cold light of day, has done the right thing?
Well, I've not been listening to the news. The only thing I've heard is from my brother and on Facebook. Now, the only thing I read the other day was Boris Johnson. Theresa May has signed something, and he dressed it up as a polished turd, I think was the terminology he used. But then he agreed to it. The article said he agreed to it. Now, why do you say that it's a polished up turd, excuse the language, and then go along and agree with it? Albeit that he's now resigned, and I hope he's resigned for the genuine reasons, and it's not just to make it look like things are, one or the other.
Well, Joe, anyway, I'd preferred if David Davis and Boris Johnson had stormed out, as was. There were no ministerial cars waiting for them. There was a very long drive. They had to walk up and call a public taxi, and that would have been a bit humiliating. I sense, Joe, that Boris, he did wait to see which way the wind was blowing. Tory voters in their millions will not live with that Chequers deal. Joe, I thank you for your call. I'm going to move on to Sharon in Oxford. Good evening, Sharon.
Hi. I spoke to you a few months ago, and I was defending Theresa May in her job, and you were sceptical about it, and I have to say you were right, and I was absolutely wrong on that. She's just a disaster.
She is. I mean, I think, Sharon, I have to say, the worst Prime Minister I've seen in my lifetime.
It's bad. I mean, she's very sneaky, she's underhand, she's not upfront with her own ministers. I think it's just terrible what's happened. And You know, it's interesting to hear you say you're going to make a comeback, and obviously if a general election happens, we need to have a party that is clearly pro-Brexit. But I suppose what we need, I feel, is you need to have something that truly shows people that Brexit is not about a right-wing issue. It's not about a conservative issue. It's actually the people being sold out the most are Labour voters. I used to vote Labour. Labour voters who want to leave the European Union. And the danger is, of course, is that UKIP has always been perceived or portrayed as being a right-wing party. And so it's really in those Labour leave seats, particularly ones with the Remain MPs, that we really need to have. That's where we really need to make sure that in a general election that a pro-Brexit party can actually make really good headway there. Because they were hoodwinked in the last election by Jeremy Corbyn and Labour. If Theresa May's not getting us out, there's absolutely no way Keir Starmer is going to do the job. And I just think that we need to make sure that Labour voters know that they can vote for a pro-Brexit party, you know?
Yeah. I mean, the fact is, Sharon, that the 2015 general election, UKIP then actually did more damage to the Labour Party than it did to the Conservative Party. So you're quite right. This question should govern ourselves, make our own laws, be an independent country. This is not a left. But
you start from the point of view of if I'd continued in this position, I would have been presenting a case which, in my view, didn't deliver the Brexit the people expected, the 17.5 million people who voted expected, namely bringing control of all our laws back to the UK and bringing control of our borders. So by raising the question, firstly, it puts it puts a disincentive into any further concessions, which is of course always possible. It's not the end of the negotiation. And secondly, if the Europeans turn this down, then I would hope we'd look again.
What exactly in the meeting at Chequers did you object to, though?
Oh, well, in terms of the policy, well, there are two policy issues and one negotiating issue. In policy terms, we were talking about using a common rule book, which means a common laws, right, set by the European Union. Parliament would nominally have the right to say yes or no to those laws, but if said no, two things could happen. One, let's say it said no to regulations on cars. All of a sudden, all the cars going to Europe are being inspected. So the so-called friction-free border this policy is supposed to deliver disappears. Secondly, it could trigger the fallback option in Northern Ireland. That's the option that the Commission put forward, saying that Northern Ireland should be in a single market, which is ridiculous from our point of view. It would create a barrier inside the country. So the sort of sword of Damocles, the disincentive against blocking any of these laws would be enormous. So so it's not really. I mean, it looks like a return of power to Parliament, but actually it's an illusion.
So when you put those points to the Prime Minister and to the Cabinet, clearly she couldn't give you any reassurance on that. But they're pretty obvious points. Why couldn't she see those?
Well, you had to ask her that. I mean, but that was only one argument, because that's one. Then you've got the question of the future customs arrangement. I think it was called FCA anyway, and it involved collecting tariffs or taxes for the European Union at our border and to pay to them. Now, even now, the European Union is taking us to court, or is looking to take us to court, because we're not, they think, paying enough tariffs on Chinese textiles. It's a so-called OLAF case. OLAF is the European organisation that does the investigations. Well, in future, we would expect them to want to inspect us again. OLAF inspect us, and therefore it's under the European Court again. So we're not escaping the European Court on our borders. So control of borders becomes an issue. So these things that people voted for in a referendum, and we reiterated during the election campaign, would not be being delivered.
But what's the alternative, though? Because a lot of people say, well, it's all very well the Brexiteers complaining about this plan that Theresa May has, but nobody's put forward an alternative plan.
Well,
what's your alternative plan?
I hate to tell you that for 7 or 8 weeks before this process, before this weekend, we had been spending my department's time writing a white paper on exactly that, on what the alternatives were. I mean, what we would do in terms of mutual recognition. In other words, not taking their laws, but saying our cars are equally safe or have equally low emissions. And that was our proposal. And so we wouldn't be sucked into the problems I've just described. Having a custom system, which is based on what they call max fact, the shorthand, but really means a streamlined custom system. That was the original set of proposals, and we had a whole white paper. I was editing version 9 by the time we got to last week.
But what's happening now to that white paper?
Well,
it's supposed to be published this week, isn't it?
Most of it will be subsumed, or not most of it, but some of the critical parts will be subsumed beneath the decision of the Cabinet on Friday. So basically, Ollie Robbins is busy rewriting it as we speak. Well, it's not Ollie Robbins.
What was it? That was Ian Dale talking to David Davis earlier this afternoon. And David Davis, very logical, very rational, and I genuinely believe doing the right thing. Sharon in Oxford, are you still there, Sharon? Hello?
Boris Johnson. Very good evening. If you've just tuned in, Nigel Farage is not with us for the rest of this hour. We've lost the line. He was not in the normal LBC studio, and I'm afraid because of the line quality, we've lost Nigel. So I'm here a little bit earlier than usual, but with only one big story to talk about. And we're asking at the moment whether Boris Johnson and David Davis were right to resign. What's your view? 0345 6060 973. We have a jammed switchboard anyway. I'm going to carry on taking these calls all the way through the evening. So let's go to Nick in Nottingham next. Hello, Nick.
Hello, good evening.
Hello, Nick. Nice to talk to you. What would you like to say?
It just seems like a very odd move from the two of them in terms of the party's been in turmoil for, ever since the election, really. And there's been scandal after scandal, so many resignations. I think earlier it said there was about 6 in about 13 weeks or so. And just piling on with those, it just seems, is the party capable of winning another general election now? And with all the issues going on with Brexit and the divisions within the Conservative Party, who are Conservative voters even supposed to vote for anymore if they're not going to be certain that Brexit can even be delivered?
Well, you're right that for a lot of voters it might be Hobson's choice, where are they going to lean over to the Lib Dems? No. Would they want to vote for Jeremy Corbyn? No. And as for why they're doing it, well, why do you think that Boris and David Davis have chosen this particular moment?
Well, I feel like with Boris, a lot of what he does is because he wishes to lead the party. I don't think he's been very covert about that. But as for David Davis, I'm not completely certain as to why he has resigned. But with Boris, it seems more that he's done a lot to undermine Theresa May in her time in government, and this just seems to be another step towards doing that and trying to force a leadership election, which he believes he can win.
You think that's what's going on, really, then? It's Boris trying to get the number 10 job?
Oh, definitely. I think most of what he's done has been to try and undermine Theresa May, and this just seems like...
And how would you feel about that? I mean, would that be a more genuine choice then? I mean, imagine that Boris somehow manages to do this, and it's not beyond the realms of possibility. And we have, let's say we have a general election, a snap general election, and we've got, on the one hand, Jeremy Corbyn, on the other hand, a Boris-led hard Brexit government with no compromise. Well, that would be more of a genuine choice for voters, wouldn't it?
It would, but I honestly don't think going into a general election, Boris Johnson would have the capabilities to win it. I think that this is only going to induce a massive swing towards the Labour Party. Like, opinion polls are very close at the moment, 1 or 2% here and there. And with all of this that's going on, it just seems like...
Well, I mean, Boris's argument was that if Theresa May continues down this line, delivers not much of a Brexit at all, then the Tories are finished anyway, because that was her whole platform, was to deliver Brexit. Brexit means Brexit. How many times did she say that? and then she doesn't. Brexit means half a Brexit if you're lucky. I mean, that's not going to win her another election or her party, is it?
Oh, that's very true as well.
Yeah.
I think the party's in a terrible position at the moment, and
maybe they all are.
I think
that might be part of the problem.
I think Labour are in a slightly better position, which, as a Conservative voter, doesn't fill me with a lot of enthusiasm. But I feel like Conservatives, they need something new. They need something. They need some new leadership to reunite the party and to engage voters better. Because I feel like at the moment there's a big divide in the party, and it's just going to lead to people leaving the party and finding someone else to vote for.
All right.
And I think this is the final swan song for the party.
Okay, well, there we are. Nick, thank you very much in Nottingham, LBC. I'm Clive Bull, and here's Jake in Belfast. Hello, Jake.
Hello, Clive.
Hi, what would you like to say?
Well, I'd just like to say that this is great news, these resignations, but I think there will only be an impact if there's more resignations. I don't think two's enough. So...
No, I agree with you. I think I don't get the feeling at the moment that anything is going to change, but you know how these things pan out. Sometimes they coordinate these resignations. So there may be more.
Yeah, there could be. It's interesting to see what Michael Gove is going to do, because obviously there was the last leadership election where he sort of stabbed Boris in the back, and it's interesting to see whether he'll put his career first here or whether he'll follow David and Boris, but we'll have to see.
Well, yes, it will be very interesting to see. Michael Gove was very vocal at the weekend, saying he was a realist and this was a good deal. So he's going to look a bit hypocritical if he now walks away, isn't he? Whereas Boris, obviously, and David Davis were fairly silent about it.
Yeah, I think the problem is if there is a leadership election, Mrs. May obviously still has a chance. You know, she certainly still has support in the party. And I don't think that's going to be good for the country. So I think that, I was going to say to Nigel, I think what we need is a resurgence back in UKIP to put more pressure on the Conservatives to go for a more hardline stance. And maybe if there was a leadership election, that it would convince Tory MPs to go for a more hardline candidate, like maybe Jacob Rees-Mogg or Boris.
Yeah, they'd have to get the support of a significant number of Tory MPs, though. I think that would be the problem for somebody like Jacob Rees-Mogg, who has his followers, but he doesn't have widespread support. Michael Gove must be in an awkward position because, I mean, there's been a lot of rumours that he might get the Foreign Secretary's job. He might get Boris's job. Or does he jump ship? Do you think that if that did happen, there was a string of resignations, do you feel then that a Brexit that you want would be more likely to be delivered?
Yes, because I think that Theresa May would certainly have to go if, most of their cabinet resigns, or at least the Brexiteers in the cabinet resign.
Do you think she should go now, do you?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Thank you very much, Jake. 0345 6060 973 is the number. Judith in Yeovil. Hello, Judith.
Hello there.
Hi. What would you like to say?
Well, I think Boris Johnson and David Davis were right to resign. It was a matter of principle. Nobody who really voted for Brexit can sign up to this, because what we are getting is not Brexit. And I am very, very angry, because I think it's a complete suborning of the democratic process. May should go, and she should go by the end of the week.
How's that going to work then? Who's going to replace her if that happened?
Well, I think there needs to be... The only problem is that the parliamentary party, the majority of them are Remainers, and we need a Brexiteer in there. It was ridiculous to have her there in the first place, but when she gave the speech on the steps outside Number 10, it sounded wonderful, and I gave her the benefit of the doubt. But I really do think she should have been got rid of last year. Because if they don't get rid of her, the Conservatives will be out for a generation. People are not happy about this. I've been out today and people are talking about it. I was on the phone when I came back to get something fixed on my computer, and the guy who was fixing it said, "What do you think of this?" I said, "I think it's outrageous." "So do I. It's not what I voted for," he said. And everybody is saying the same thing.
Which are the bits that you didn't vote for that you really object to?
I want out of the European Union, completely out of the European Union.
She would say that you're getting that. It is an actual Brexit.
No, we are not. We are not.
Well, which are the bits that
the
are
rule
not?
Book, because that will be changed. That will be changed, no doubt about it. The fact that we are not going to have freedom of movement. There is going to be freedom of movement. She's saying it won't happen. It will happen.
Well, she's saying it won't.
Means out.
But hang on a minute, Judith. Her position is there won't be freedom of movement. So how can you object to that?
I'm sorry. If she told me the time of day, I wouldn't believe her.
Well, I
would not believe her.
That's more of a personal thing then, isn't it? I mean, what she says on paper, a lot of it is delivering Brexit.
No, it isn't. It isn't.
Well,
if it was delivering
freedom
Brexit,
of movement.
Boris Johnson and David Davis, particularly David Davis, for whom I have a lot of respect and a lot of time, they would not have resigned. And I would like to see a few more.
Why do you think Boris Johnson has resigned?
I'm cagey about Boris Johnson. I am cagey. I think he realises this is his last shot at the leadership.
Yes.
As long as he delivers Brexit, I don't mind. But this is not Brexit. He has said himself, this is reducing us to a colony. And that's exactly what it's doing.
All right, Judith, thank you for your view. We'll take more in a moment if you've just tuned in. Nigel Farage was here earlier, but he's not in the regular studio today, and the line wasn't very good, so we've unfortunately had to call a halt to that. So I'm here early. I'm Clive Bull here on LBC, and we are talking about only one story today, clearly. That's the crisis in government with Boris Johnson and David Davis resigning. Two very big names from the cabinet. It appears that collective cabinet responsibility didn't last very long. Do you support these resignations? What should happen next? Do you stand by Theresa May? 0345 6060 973 is the number. This is LBC 745. LBC, Clive Bull, in for Nigel Farage, who was here on the line earlier, but due to technical problems, we have lost Nigel. We're still talking about the breaking news today, extraordinary news, which is a crisis in government with the Foreign Secretary and the Brexit Secretary both resigning, and a lot of talk about a leadership challenge, a crisis for Theresa May after that Chequers deal. Let's have your view on 0345 6060 973. Nikki in Goodrich in Herefordshire. Hello, Nikki.
Hi there.
Hi, what do you think about this?
I don't personally think that either of them should have resigned. Probably slightly controversial. I do think that obviously you've got principles that you need to stand by, but I do think that we also make it far too easy for our politicians to be able to basically throw the towel in when the going gets tough. They're there to do a job. You only have to look at the likes of David Cameron to know that he set all of this up and basically put us in a position where we voted on a referendum. The vote didn't go his way, so we chucked in the towel. And I think that's just made far too easy for our politicians in today's society. You know, we pay them to do a job. What they should have done is they should have lobbied together with other politicians who felt the same to challenge the leadership to then take Brexit forward in the way.
So what you're saying, they should,
forward.
If he's got the job of Foreign Secretary, he should stick with it because he's taken the job, and that is his job.
Yeah, it is his job, absolutely. Definitely it is his job. But also at the same time, you know, if he feels that he doesn't agree with certain principles, you know, that it's not just he and David Davis who feel like that.
Isn't he sacrificing his job, though? If he's decided, I mean, I've got my doubts about his real motives, but let's give him the benefit of the doubt and say this is really purely on principle. Then you have to admire that, don't you? He's given up the highly paid job, the ministerial car, on a point of principle.
No, I don't think he's a point of principle. I don't think his motives are a point of principle. I do possibly think that David Davis's are, but I certainly don't think Boris's are. I think Boris will be looking for a leadership challenge, but I think he should have done that in the right way. You know, I think he should have stayed in his political role. You know, I do feel that, you know, obviously I know it's a vote. Brexit is a difficult situation. I'm a leaver. I voted leave. You know, I want us to come out of the European Union, but I do feel we've taken far too long to do it. I think it was a fail-safe. It was going to fail in the first place, having a Prime Minister who basically was a Remainer. A Remainer. You know, we should have
but
had
then you've got the central problem.
A Leaver.
You're right. The problem is that you have a government and a party in power who is predominantly not Leavers. They're predominantly Remainers, and yet they've got to deliver something that they don't really believe in. That's the problem, isn't it? You've got two different battles of democracy going on at the same time.
But then at the same time, what we have to look at is that these people are paid to do a job for the country. It's the country's wishes. It's the country's will. Even though it was marginal, we do live in a democratic society.
We do.
That basically, we're supposed to live in a democratic society where we make a vote. That vote decides the way forward.
We do, but what I'm saying, we had two votes. We had a vote which resulted in Theresa May becoming Prime Minister and her party winning. We had another vote, a referendum on the EU, but those two don't fit together.
No, they certainly don't. And I also do believe that, you know, was she the only option for us to have as a Prime Minister at the time? Because there just wasn't anybody else that was strong enough. I do think that Boris would have made a better Prime Minister than Theresa May.
Could still.
To be honest.
Do you think?
Yes, I do, yeah. I do think that he has obviously a kind of sort of comedy sort of aspect about him, which I know that a lot of people don't like, but I do certainly think that he would have put a braver face on and made tougher decisions, I think, than Theresa has.
All
I think that she's been a little bit too soft.
OK. Nikki, thank you very much. Gareth in the Algarve in Portugal. Hello, Gareth.
Hello. Good evening, Clive.
Evening. Wow, you sound better in Portugal than the last caller in the UK. There we are.
Well, it's probably because I'm more relaxed and everything. But, the point I want to make is it's kind of interesting that they've both resigned. I guess none of us could comment on their personal and political ambitions and why they resigned in detail. That will be up to history to do it. But the point I want to make is I would remind all of the MPs that they voted overwhelmingly in Parliament for a statement by David Cameron that said no ifs, buts, we are voting for to leave or not leave the EU. And they overwhelmingly endorsed it, including Theresa May. And they have backtracked and they have done everything to avoid that issue. They are against the people. And in my experience of 70 years, I've never known a parliamentary environment where the parliamentarians seem to be against the people. Now, some of them call it populist, perhaps. Populist is a term that is pejorative in their view. In my view, it means that we, the people, have exerted our will, and they, the politicians, have a need to obey that will.
What about the other people, like the constituents who in some constituencies voted Remain, and the MP is there
but that's democracy.
Represent
you can't say we.
You're saying they should only represent one set of people and not another.
Well, in the end, democracy is all about the will of the majority, whether we like it or not.
No, it's not. It's about representing all of those views.
No, it isn't.
The parliamentary democracy, you represent all of those people.
No, but in the end, the will of the majority should prevail. And to be honest, that extends into many areas of political life today. And I make one other point, that if you read in detail the sticky hand of the dirty civil service are behind a lot of the problems that exist in this Brexit debate altogether. I've read extensively about how David Davis was emasculated by the civil service by taking away his primary confidants within the civil service and replacing them with Remain ones and making sure he was isolated. So there's a lot of things that are behind this whole issue other than the headline news of two politicians with whatever view you have about their personal ambitions.
All right, Gareth, thank you. Let's squeeze in Lauren before the news in Streatham. Hello, Lauren.
Hi, how you doing?
Very good. What would you like to say?
Well, basically, I've just been listening to the debate, and I disagree with what a lot of people are saying. So, disclaimer, I'm half French, half British.
Mm-hmm.
I've spent the first 20 years of my life in France, and I've been back in the UK for about 20 years. I live in London. I'm firmly on the Remain side. What I'm currently standing, basically, is that the referendum was sold on a pack of lies. I think that Johnson, David Davis are now resigning because Theresa May is actually trying to make the best out of the worst possible scenario. This is where I'm coming from. I hear arguments that the civil service are Remain. The bottom line is they have the facts. They have the facts. They know. All the economic indicators are basically showing that Brexit is going to be an absolute disaster. Keeping the alignment is the best possible scenario, in my opinion. And
the problem is, you say it was all sold on a pack of lies, but you must know, if you followed the referendum campaign, both sides were using untruths, exaggerations, and were not informing the debate properly.
I do agree. However,
George Osborne, David Cameron came out with a load of nonsense that didn't turn out to be true. They were trying to frighten people. So now nobody believes any of this. You can come up with any number of experts talking about economic impacts. Nobody will believe a word of it. They have already made up their minds.
Possibly. What I'm telling you, however, is that if you look at the news at the moment, and I can talk from personal experience because my business has basically gone bust. Since January. So now, I used to work... I work
because of Brexit?
Because of Brexit. Do you know why? Because there is a lot less investment going on in the marketing industry. So we're talking about digital transformation projects, that sort of thing. Basically, there's a lot less marketing budget, and basically there's no money to hire people like me anymore. And actually, if you look at the job market in marketing as well, there are a lot of struggles going on at the moment in the job market.
How would you feel?
I've never had any problems before. I've had a business for 4 years, never had any problems before. My turnover was going year on year. Suddenly, 2018, boom, closing down. So, for me personally, I fear the worst. And I think that she's trying to get the best out of a bad deal. I think that Johnson and Davis basically chickened out, and they wanted something which is completely undeliverable. If we get a no deal Brexit, this is going to be an absolute disaster for the country.
And you put that all down to Brexit, do you? All the problems of your company?
Well, personally, yes, because I never had any problems before. I had a 4-year-old business. I never had any problems before. And then suddenly I've had contracts being cancelled on the grounds that there was no more marketing budget. And it's literally happened in 2018.
All right, Lauren, got to stop you there. Thank you very much indeed. But we're going to...